Part of the holiday of Tu B'Shvat involves what's called shivat haminim, the 7 species of the land of Israel. And it's talking about the grains and the fruit that grow. There's a list that appears in the book of Deuteronomy. It's actually Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8, where it lists out the blessing of the land of Israel in terms of the 7 species, the 7 fruits and grains that are mentioned in the list. The first thing that's interesting is the number 7, because whenever we're in Torah and we encounter the number 7, our minds immediately go back to creation and the symbolism of 7, the 7 days of creation, because 7 is symbolic of totality. It's really that sense of saying that when we encounter the number 7, we're talking about everything. So although we're going to list 7 of these grains and species, they're really symbolic of those things that fit into those categories that together amount to the blessings and bounty of the land of Israel. So when we say what are these 7, the first one is chita, it's wheat. And so the wheat cracker is the wheat, and that would symbolize all the wheat that the land of Israel, that's the first one. The next one is barley. And so all of the barley seeds that Israel produces, all of those grains that fit into the barley category, that's barley. So we have wheat, we have barley, that's chita and seorah. We have gefen, which are the grapes or the vines, the grape vines that grow throughout Israel that give us the grapes. And then we have the figs, and that comes next on the list, and that's the te'ena. So we have all the figs that would be coming from the land of Israel, the sweetness of that. And rimon is pomegranate. And it's something that we're used to seeing in North America around the time of Rosh Hashanah, which is when we're looking for it. Yom Kippur, the high holidays, is when we're looking for the pomegranates, because of the symbolism that's all the seeds inside the pomegranates. That is this real sense of unending blessing in what the pomegranate can give us. And the beauty of it, the color of it, the richness of it, all of this speaks into the species as well. And so that's rimon. And then we have olive oil, olive trees. And that's one of the 7 species that's mentioned. And that's something that we have the olive oil that we use quite a bit of. And of course, we know that Israel is known for this. And the last one on the list is honey. And we often think of honey as bee honey, and certainly that is honey. And when it comes to Israel, there's another kind of honey that is included in, and it's the honey that comes from dates. When the dates break down, they break down into a very, very, very sticky, gooey honey. And it's a very particular taste, very sweet, just like the honey that we know from the bees, but I'd venture to say it's probably even sweeter. And it's really this idea of having the fruit itself begin to break down and join together to create this lovely, lovely honey goo that's binding and sweet and delicious, all of it symbolizing the land of Israel and what it can give us. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this, it's connected to Tu B'Shvat, and there's all kinds of traditions that we have about how we eat them. We eat them on Tu B'Shvat. Each one of them has their own blessing, and it's really about abundance of blessings that occur between nature and us. And when we come to nature and we take what nature gives us from the land of Israel, we elevate it by blessing it and create a spiritual relationship with it as well. But what's also interesting is that when you go through the list, we're noticing that the list has an order to it. The very first thing was wheat. And it's not until we get to the third thing that we come to the grapes. And this actually has impact onto our Shabbat tables. The wheat is going to give us the challah. The grapes are going to give us the wine. And because this list has a priority to it, the wheat should come first. So the challah sitting on our table should be blessed first. But it isn't. First, we make kiddush, the wine, coming from the grapes. So in order to remind ourselves of this list and always remind ourselves of our connection and blessings that nature give us that we bless back, we will cover the wheat. So we will take the challahs on our table and we will put a cover on them because we're going to be blessing the wine first. And we want to respect the fact that they were mentioned first in the Torah. The wheat came first. The The wheat is the challah, the bread, the very first thing that humanity is told they'll encounter when we leave the Garden of Eden. This isn't a small detail. So in order to be respectful of the place of wheat in our world and in our lives, we cover the challah with a challah cover and we bless the wine. And only once that is finished, we will remove the cover and then come and bless the challah. It's a symbolic moment. We know that in truth, there really isn't anything going on in terms of insulting the challah or offending the challah, but it's symbolic to us and it's important. It's important that we look at that Shabbat table and we remember this list, that we remember Tu B'Shvat, we remember the list that the Torah tells us of the land of Israel and its blessings, and we remember the place it has in our lives. All of that because we just glanced at a challah cover that covered bread that was made of wheat that was first on the list.